Okay, how's that looking? Yeah, great. So Tarot Initiates Part 2, we're going to get into the Lesser Arcana, which translates to the smaller secrets. But actually, I don't know. I find that the smaller secrets or the lesser arcana is actually where the most transformation happens. And oftentimes, if you hear stories of great awakenings or these massive life-changing shifts in consciousness that happen, they kind of happen when we're doing some ho-hum stuff, like taking a shower or going for a run or maybe dancing at the nightclub. One of my favorite mystics, Jakob Boma, had his epiphany one day when he was staring at a pewter dish and noticing how the sun glinted off of the material. All of a sudden, fully formed came this idea about how the wheelworks of the universe work together, and then he proceeded to write all of it down. The Lesser Arcana is where we apply the kind of great big mythical teachings that we get to in the major arcana to our lives and lived experiences. There are a couple of different types of minor arcana. One is what I'm going to show you, which is minor arcana that have just the suit and the number of suits. And then there's minor arcana with pictures on them. Totally up to you where you want to go with that. I often recommend if you're learning or you're in the kind of memorization stage, it's really handy to have minor arcana that have pictures because we remember things much better when there's a story attached. I tend to use the um, non-pictorial minor arcana in my own practice, mainly because if we look at these two cards together and we see, oh my God, love and death, when I would read for folks, there would sometimes be this like barrier to softness that would happen because some of the images are so leading. They could bring up fear or maybe a resistance to hearing. And so I kind of like to work with minor arcana that are less sort of leading in terms of story. But there's no right or wrong. And certainly, I think in the beginning years, having those pictures is wonderful. And there's so many decks now. So you can find ones that have major arcana that are not so um, foreboding or that are a little bit more welcoming. And you can find ones that have representations that feel good to you. There are queer decks, there are decks with um, lots of different types of bodies, and you could also find decks that are abstract, that are not figurative. You can find decks with animals, whatever makes you feel like this scene is comfortable, accessible. You can find yourself in it. You can walk around in it. So I'm going to start by talking about the suits themselves. Those of you that engage with things like tarot or alchemy, or tarot, of course, that's what we're doing, astrology or alchemy, or any kind of system that harkens back to a kind of Hellenistic strategy for understanding the world, you'll be pretty familiar with these four elements already. Um, the four elements were the ways that this is attributed to Greek scholarship, but actually the Greeks would have been in conversation with lots of different cultures in the Near East. It's not a solely Greek concept to break things down into elements, but the Greeks identified these four and sort of passed them along. And so elements are an idea that everything in creation is made up of the same building blocks, just slightly rearranged or in varying proportions. And these qualities, particularly of the material world, can be discovered, assessed, used not only to figure out what a thing is or what it's like, but also to figure out how to bring balance to things. So the elemental system was used in science, it was used in counseling, in forms of psychology. It was used certainly in astrology. It was used in magic, to kind of figure out where you're positioned, what the balance of things are, and how you might enact transformation. So we now know that elements, or we now call, I should say, more specifically, we now call elements a different thing, right? We point to the periodic table. We talk about elements in terms of atomic structure, but this is more about behaviors that you see in the natural world than it is about the actual sort of material elements of things. And so, really, when we're talking about elements, we're talking about behaviors, qualities, attributes. And so tarot would have emerged out of a time where this was still a way to think about the natural sciences, psychology, astrology, and alchemy. Um, so we've got swords as air, which is a fast-moving, invisible, um, changeable, absorbent, and also strong and powerful and life-bringing force in this world. And these are ordered in terms of creation mythology. So in the beginning, there was a great big abyss, and this abyss began to get a sense of itself. Why that is, we don't know, and who that self is, we can only examine through examining ourselves and our world. But the abyss began to sense into itself, and this sensing created movement, which created air. And this sensing and this movement was, in the Hermetic system, equated with consciousness itself. And so air is equivalent to thought, right? Thought is invisible, but powerful, but changeable, but quick moving, but absorbent, cartwheeling, freewheeling, world building. Um, so our swords, our air, are connected to consciousness and the thinking mind. And in terms of cardinal direction, it would be associated with the east, where the sun rises, the beginnings of things. It's associated with spring, when the natural world seems to wake up and start anew. It's associated in human growth with childhood. And then we've got these things called the humors. Is anyone here familiar with humors? A little bit. Yeah. So this was a way that right around the same time that Hippocrates and Plato were writing about the elements and how you could use them to understand nature, they were also thinking about how you could use the elements to understand um, anatomy, medicine, and psychology. And so they broke each of the elements down into a type of characteristic. So there's the sanguine characteristic, which is associated with air. And these people, if you think about air signs in astrology, if that's a useful parallel, they're often noted for quick thinking, being talkative, high energy, nimble, quick, right? And when you think about these things in terms of medicine or psychology, um, sometimes quick thinking and nimble can happen in excess, can lead to worry or anxiety or um, intensity of thought that might feel a little bit um, oppressive. And it can also lead to a kind of airiness or flightiness or changeability, that might feel distracting sometimes. And we all experience all these ranges of elemental existence. So this hopefully helps to build a picture of the sword's suit, right? Swords are sharp, they're clear, they're new, they're fast moving. They get things going. And you can think about it, if you like, as the kind of cutting of the umbilical cord and the beginning of our independent lives. Um, our lives in our own bodies starts with a sword. And then the next thing also follows in order in terms of a creation story. So we have consciousness beginning to emerge. And out of this consciousness, we have suddenly um, the abyss, and then the abyss being aware of itself. And these two kind of polarities start to create some tension, some energy, and eventually some light and some heat. And this light and heat begins to spread and start fires all scattering across the cosmos. And so the wands are associated with energy and fire. And if we were going to connect it with a sort of sense, it would be intuiting. Um, we know because we know because we know, because we read energy, because we are energy, because we know energy. I love to think about intuition and sort of these really exhilarating examples of it that we can experience, like going to a party and meeting someone and just going, ah, that person right there is going to be a good friend. I just know. I just know because I know because I know because my energy has a match to theirs. Our fires are igniting. Um, this is connected with the South, the realm of summer and heat and the developmental stage of adolescence. This is associated with what is called the choleric humor. And by the way, all of these humors have pretty grody sounding names, if you ask me, right? But choleric humor is what maybe you think it is, right? It's fieriness, it's energetic, it's lots of heat in the personality. And sometimes this can be a lot, this can be overbearing. This can be attention seeking in a way that's irritating. Or sometimes this can be really illuminating. This can be something you really want to stand next to. This can be an energy that radiates, that feels like a sun, that's warm, that's joyous. And, my adolescence was like this. I mean, I was insufferable and also pretty cool, right? So fire, if it's a useful parallel, you can think about fire signs in astrology and some of the qualities that are associated with that sign, right? Leadership, magnetism, energy, joyfulness, a sort of sunniness of disposition. And I know there's astrologers in the room, so please jump in. It's not my discipline. Okay. Cups are the next thing that arrive. So we have the consciousness and its awareness of self beginning to create all this energy and vibration. And at the other end, the reflection of the abyss begins to start to gain substance. It begins to start to churn and turn into water, or what in alchemy would be called the prima materia, the very first matter, beginning to form and to move, but it's amorphic. It doesn't have a shape yet. And so we have water, which can be connected to emotional senses, feeling senses. And it's connected in terms of cardinal directions to the west, to autumn, to adulthood, and to the phlegmatic humor, which, if you think as a parallel about water signs, would have all of these capacities of fluidity, adaptability, emotional access, emotional intensity. And on one aspect of watery intensity, you've got just really intense emotions that can feel overwhelming. And in the other aspect, in another, not the other, another aspect of wateriness can be this capacity to pick things up, to mold into things, to flow into things, to receive and perceive in ways that are quite valuable, quite lovely. And then water signs, what do you perceive in terms of their qualities? They're often given the attributes of intuition, deep feeling, um, a sense of community responsibility, a sense of relationality. And then last but not least, we have water beginning to become more and more dense and starting to take on differentiated forms. And worlds that are physical are brought into being. And so we have coins, disks, and worlds, which is connected with the earth element. So folks will ask, what's the difference between coins, disks, and worlds? It's the same element. It's really just the tarot designer's choice of language. Um, and you can infer, if you want, um, perhaps a value system in the choice of words, right? Coins might be a value system that sees the earth as having value in a commerce-oriented way. Discs might be slightly more neutral in terms of what physical material could be, just the creation of it. And then worlds also a little bit less commerce oriented, a little bit more open to the fact that we're talking about solid ground. So Earth would be connected. The word sensing that I have on the screen is not specific enough. This would be physical sensing. So what do I know with my body? Um, Earth is connected to the north, to the season of winter, to the elder, or the stage of being an elder, and to the melancholic humor. And as a Capricorn, I always struggled with this. Oh no, melancholic humor. Ooh. If it's helpful, if anyone else has these struggles, there's a great essay out there by Angela Voss called The Power of the Melancholic Humor. And in antiquity, the melancholic humor was connected with divination and poetry. The melancholic humor, as you might imagine, as it's made its way into modern vernacular, can be heavy. It can be emotionally heavy. It can be slow moving or slow to change. And then in its other aspects, the earth personality or the melancholic humor can have a lot of solidity, a lot of loyalty. Um, they show up, they get things done. And if it's useful, you can think about parallels in astrology and what qualities do you assign to the earth signs that they all share. So these are some of the connections with the suits. And then the minor arcana are numbered. And so again, we have the creation story as or a creation story as our kind of anchor to make our way into and around what numbers are and can be. And there are many systems of tarot study that are really numerologic in their focus. Um, and they talk about sacred numerology and sacred geometry. And there are systems of practice that are really kind of anchored here, even when dealing with the major arcana. And so if that's you, this might be a helpful way to think about the minor arcana. So we've got the aces, our ones. They're the first. That's the dot. So that is consciousness arising, the dot, the first, the ultimate. It stands alone. And so you might see aces and ones as really incredible beginnings, the beginnings of the making of a world. And then following the thread of a story of creation, when this consciousness perceives itself, we suddenly have a dynamic, we have polarity, we have relationship. And ancient Greek scholars would call the types of polarities eris and eros, love and strife, or attraction and repulsion. And so with the twos, we start to learn about this. We learn about things in relationship. We learn about attraction and repulsion. We learn about what it's like to have two of something. So if you want, we can start already to yoke these numbers together with the elements. So if we've got two of worlds, we've got two earths happening. Could be, if we're wanting some interpretive guidance here, that two realms of practice, two realms of experience, two possibilities, two possible places, um, two possible people, depending on how you read Earths, right? Um, is starting to show up in a reading. This can be a way to approach it. And then we have the three, the tip of the triangle forms, and we have our first shape, which is a very, very big deal to early mathematicians. Three was beloved. So we have the abyss, the reflection. And then the third thing is the energy between them that starts to create possibility for matter. And so three is associated with creation, creativity, the energy required to transform or to invent. And so again, if you think of the three of earths, the three of worlds, the three of discs, the three of coins here, this could be creative energy applied to an art, an artwork, an actual job, if that's what you're kind of looking at. Of course, these things will be informed by what you're talking about, either to yourself or to someone you're reading for. But just even on their own, Three of Worlds is that creation moment. And when you yoke it to the earth element and your associations with it, what do you get? And then four, we have a very stable structure forming. We have the number of stability and we have the square. And so if we think about stability and earth, we might think about stable structure. We might think about a home. We might think about um, building things that are long lasting, that are sturdy, that are resilient, and things that are stable and sturdy and resilient still are subject to the forces of change and the forces of instability. Someone was describing to me the other day some of the engineering mechanics required to keep a bridge up in space, because all it wants to do is buckle and collapse, right? Even though it looks very solid and very sturdy, there are all these forces that are catalyzing the bridge to transform, to collapse, to become something different, to change its shape. And so with the five, we have the pentagram, also beloved by ancient numerologists and associated with many different things. Um, the pentagram was associated with Venus, who traces that shape in the night sky over her 8-year sort of movement around our skies, at least from our perspective. It would have been associated with the five elements. The fifth element is not pictured in the tarot because it is the love that the universe has for itself that made creation happen, which is quite beautiful. But so it's the five elements, it's the five senses, it's the pentagram, it's Venus. And for our purposes, in our story, it's the instability that gets us to evolve to the next phase or the next thing. And so now we've got the six, which is an upward triangle laid over top a downward triangle in terms of shape. And so we have evolution, we have success, um, we have harmonious creativity happening. And so classically, the upward pointing triangle would be the energies of the positive polarity or projection or upward momentum. And then the downward triangle would be the negative polarity, the downward pointing, the receptive, um, the receiving. So the projecting and the receiving energies meet each other in a six and become um, successful, create success through relations or relationality. And then the seven, again, I guess all these numbers were beloved by the ancients. They really loved their numbers, but the seven in particular, seven is also often associated with insight and mysticism. We've got seven colors in the visible spectrum, seven notes on the Western musical scale, and there was a perceived harmony in the sevens that bring us into a relationship with the divine. With the eights, we've got two squares or the octagon. And so we've got material progress. We've got our stability, and then we have material progressing. So again, it could be useful. I'll go over to the Five of Cups to think about yoking the element together with the numbers. So the Five of Cups would be emotions, feeling senses, connected with instability or catalyst. And so on the Smith-Waite deck, there's a real sad scene on there. And sometimes it has the word disappointment written on it. And certainly disappointment is part of the human experience. It's part of our growth. It's part of how we change, right? If we're disappointed in the systems we exist within, we can catalyze changes in them. It's sort of a necessary feeling. But that is a card where sometimes I really prefer having the suit and the number so that we don't get led in terms of what this disappointment might look like or be about. If we move next door and we think about the cups, the feeling senses in terms of the six, the evolution, the success, this could be an emotional or feeling state that feels really evolved, that feels really joyful, that can really appreciate and love and admire one's own success, which is a beautiful thing, or to celebrate others and their success. So just two suggestions of how you might look at these things. The nine is attainment, the nonagon. And so the nine is the triple trinity, right? This is really when we've hit our zenith of fulfillment, creative fulfillment, whatever it was we were trying to do, we got there. And then the 10, the end, the decagon. So things hitting their culminating point, um, point of death, of waning, of culmination. And so in the Smith-Waite deck, you'll see somebody with the Ten of Swords laying on the ground, covered in swords, dead on the floor. Um, and so that can point to a real, the grief and the misery that attends endings. I experience grief even when things end that I didn't like, right? It's tough to let go. So that's certainly true, perhaps, of what can attend that card. Um, Ten of Wands, if we think about, so these red stripy things are wands in the Marseille deck. If we think about energy hitting its ultimate, it's too much, it's collapse point. Maybe you're talking with someone about taking on too much, about being energetically taxed, about perhaps taking on other people's problems, or perhaps hitting an endpoint with a particular struggle, and just really feeling the burnout from that, could be a way that you link these ideas together. So the minor arcana is a real place of joy in a reading, I think. And one thing we can do with them is start to think about kind of how the day-to-day experience, how our day-to-day decisions, how we feel in our day-to-day impacts what it is we're calling in or cultivating, how we can make adjustments in these very tiny ways that make these huge ripple effects. For some reason, the slide with the figures is missing. So just give me a second to pull those up for you, because we've also got our pages, our knights and our queens.
Eliza,
Yes.
could you repeat a little bit about the eight? I think I was distracted when you talked about it.
Yeah. Um, let's see. Let's get back there. So here they are. The eight is material progress. So with the four, we've got the stability. We've built something materially solid. And then with the eight, we've materially progressed. We've built something materially solid that is accelerating in some way. So this could be architecture, projects, artworks, yeah, anything that would have some material resonance or some earth resonance for somebody. Did that answer it? Cool. Okay, let me just pull up these court friends. Give me 1 second.
It's so helpful to hear the numerological associations. As someone that has been using the Rider Waite deck, I'm realizing how much that imagery informs the reading. And as you said last week, just how morose all of the imagery is. It really makes so much of the deck feel like projected crisis. And yeah,
Yeah.
just thank you for offering this more open visual language.
Ah, I'm so glad it works for you. Yeah. For some, it feels overwhelming to think about numerology and shapes, and that's totally okay too. But yeah, yes, I'm glad it resonates for you to think about things that way if it's useful. It's also helpful too if we've got a background in astrology, to think about, oops, let me share this in a better way, to think about elements in terms of personality and how that shapes what we're seeing. Okay, so here are our people. They slid out of my deck. So we've got a gender problem, right? In this particular image set, there's masculine and feminine, and three suits are, given a more masculine sort of clothing presentation, and only one is feminine. And this luckily is starting to change in the tarot conversation, and we have decks with imagery that is more gender expansive. Um, in terms of giving readings, I just have a practice not only of asking how people identify before reading for them, but also being careful when they tell me that they're asking about a relationship, that I understand how to language it so that it's appropriate. Um, the names of the suits in the Marseille deck, or the names of the courts, are kings, queens, knights, and pages. We're in a medieval court. And so kings could be a mature masculine with the personality type of whatever suit they're hanging on to. So again, kingly energy doesn't have to be masculine in any kind of gender construct way, although it can be. And then queens are slightly, if you look at the order of things here, in a medieval court, lesser in power. And this would be the feminine sort of evolved power or most powerful, or more mature, whatever that might mean to you. And given the personality attributes of whatever suit they're holding. So we've got, let's say, Queen of Worlds, Queen of Earth, right? This is a very powerful, gravitational, perhaps materially concerned or materially sound figure. And you want to pay attention when you're looking at the courts at what they're facing, who they're facing, who they have their back to, what they're running towards or away from if they're in motion. And so these are really the animators of our scenes. These are our actors. Next, we've got the knights, and these are our movers and shakers, and these would be heading in maturity towards king or queen or royalty. And they're out there. They're getting stuff. They're grasping at things. They're energizing things. They're making things move. So if we think about the one all the way on the right, the Knight of Swords, this is a mover and a shaker in the element of air, words, language, ideas. Um, Depending on how they're aspected, is that sword aggressive or is that sword, a joyful clarity that's coming in? Or, finally a flood of words coming in after you've been stuck. And then at the bottom, we've got our pages. And pages would be the youngest members of the court. And in a court system, these are the messengers, right? You send your page out to send a lover a letter or to plot something or whatever, to deliver some jewels, whatever's going on. And so pages act this way in a reading. They'll either represent the sort of youth energy and or the energy of deliverance, the arrival of a message, the arrival of news. And so let's say we've got page of coins. This would be arrival of some news about material goings on. If someone's inquiring about a job and page of coins comes up, you'll hear something. Now, every deck is different, so I try not to be too prescriptive in this particular course about the specific images in the court cards. They change almost from deck to deck. But as you start familiarizing yourselves with these people, you'll see all these other kinds of things going on with them too, that you can use to build these narratives and these stories. So when I give readings to folks, I'm often telling stories and I'm asking people to tell me their stories, and we're building up a mythology that then, with our words and our language and our attention and the sacred circle of prayer that we're in, if we build up a mythology about where we are and what's to come, we will tend to go on and act it out, right? So it's a really special um, storytelling. It's a storytelling that will then go and oftentimes see to it. So let's say I've got my page of cups here, right? News, emotional news, feelings news. For me, this is the poet in the deck, right? And they've got their chalice and they also have bread. And so if I'm telling a story and I'm talking to someone about what is arriving, I might go into, again, this will be based on your own data banks, right? You might one of the diviners I work with sings disco songs a lot, right? This is how they get stories into my head and into our realm. Other folks talk about film or popular culture. I'm a different kind of nerd. So when I see the page of cups, I might talk to you about searching for the Holy Grail and different legends around this that I think might pertain to your particular situation. Or I might talk about the sacrament of bread and wine and what it is to take those things into the mouth as it pertains to your question. or if I'm reading for myself as it pertains to my own question. The other thing that's possible in looking at any of these cards, but for me in particular, the court cards, because they're holding stuff, is that you can get some notion of a ritual idea. So we'll get to this more next week. But when I give readings, I always offer a homework assignment because we need to not just hear the stories, we need to act them out sometimes to get the change really moving. And so it's possible, let's say, if I've got the Page of Cups positioned in a way that feels really significant to me, I might work with the person to see if there's a transubstantiation ritual that they could do, an eating of something holy that might signify change for them in a real moving way. Or it could be the offering of the bread and the wine, let's say to the ancestors, if this is a concern, or to the land, and figuring out what kind of bread and wine ritual could be helpful in enacting change. So the courts are really useful in that way too, because their implements will help you understand um, what kind of action you can prescribe. So I'm going to talk about setting up a reading, and then we'll take a little break so we can set ourselves up. And our first little practice session will be just pulling one card for ourselves, but using these strategies. And I'll introduce them now. We'll take a little break, and then I'll guide us through them. These are the ways that I was taught to set up a reading space. Of course, adapt and make them make sense for you. So, beginning a reading begins with self-inventory. Readings are very, very, very special things. And I don't mean that to say that you should never do a reading on the fly, or you should never do a reading when you're panicked or stressed, that you have to be in this pristine environment. I think as we tap into sacred symbolism, we recognize that it's everywhere and accessible to us at any time. But if, especially, I'm giving a reading to another person, I do want to be pretty grounded, pretty secure in my own energy, pretty self-aware, just so I'm not inviting things into this space that aren't going to be helpful. Obviously, there's no perfection, there's no purity, things happen. But particularly when beginning a reading, in my own practice, I'll start with self-inventory. And so I'll start with the earth. How's my body doing? That's where I go first. Am I feeling tense? How's my jaw doing? How's my scalp? How are my ears? How are my shoulders? Just noticing if it makes sense, inviting in some softness. If you're reading for someone, you can offer this to them as well, or not. The next one can be an interesting one. Air, how is my mind? So it's noticing what minds are cyclical, circular. So there's often a set of thoughts just going in each particular phase of our lives. It can be nice to sit and just go, what's the mind up to? Or if that feels like not a specific enough question, you can ask, what's the quality of the mind? Is it active? Um, is it spacious? Is it agitated? Is it choppy? Is it scattered? Is it focused? What's it doing? And then if it's useful, you can invite, for the purposes of giving a reading, some softness into the mind. And then the fire question, how's my energy doing? Does it feel active, passive? Does it feel absorbent or resistant? What's it up to? How's my energy level? Is it high? Is it low? What's happening? And then that can be a useful place to think about, am I in a kind of energetic state where I'm really going to take on a burden here? Um, hmm, the prayer next can be helpful with all of these things, but good to notice. And then water. How are my feelings? What's going on there? Joy, sorrow, mm, calm, contemplative. What are the feelings doing? And if it's useful, just inviting in some softness. Some folks in these practices have real preferences for how they feel before they begin a reading. Um, for myself, I just tend to check in with all these things. Um, I give readings for work, and so sometimes I do have to show up with I'm a little depleted or I'm a little scattered, and just sort of showing up, knowing that, noticing that, offering myself some softness, inviting myself to be first present with myself and then present with the other person can be really useful. And so I have the moon card up here. This is a Smith-Waite iteration of the moon. Just to again sort of talk about some of the clues about intuition that are in this card, right? So we have on the left this kind of dog barking and going wild, and on the right, the wild wolf sitting tame. So we want to allow our intuition to do what it needs to do. We want it's our wild nature to be here, right? Our poetic self, our inner poet, our wild, ranging, freewheeling, free associative, mythic mind. We want that at the ready. And then we really want to try, if we can, to tame our attachment to outcome. And this can, in itself, begin to form your practice and the ethics that you start to build around your practice. So I don't read for people that are very, very close to me. Sometimes, if I feel like, you know what, I'm really attached to the outcome for you, or I know you're really attached to the outcome and I don't want to be implicated, I love you, but call a stranger, right? So it's not always possible to tame our expectations or our wish for a certain outcome. Maybe it's not possible at all. But to the degree that we can, it's useful to loosen our hold on that, to trust that what is being shown is a catalyst for greater evolution, expansion, perception. Um, we've got to trust our tool in that way. We've got to assume that our tool that we're using is not is there for our own clarity, for our own poetry, for our own ease in navigating this world. The lobster is an interesting one, and we talked about this last week, I know, but it's associated with the moon, as is the crab, because they do that thing where they grow and cast off shells and grow and cast off shells. And the moon does the thing where it grows and contracts and grows and contracts, um, disappears and comes back. And so it's also talking about intuition being connected to cycles. And you may notice that your intuition is sharper, heightened during certain cycles, seasonal cycles, lunar cycles, physical cycles, mental cycles. Um, it can be interesting to pay attention to that. Um, it's also connected to death and regeneration. So with the tarot, I think we have the capacity to regenerate on a soul level. And the way that the tarot was taught to me is that it's a tool for soul polishing and soul building. So, in the Gnostic tradition, which was rooted in Egypt originally, and it would have borrowed things from Egyptian cosmology, most certainly, there is a belief that you're born with a soul and you want to polish it and work on it and repair it and help it to gleam so that it returns to the infinite, um, filled to the brim with poetic knowledge, information, and understanding. So, our first exercise, which I'll get to in a moment, is about looking at how the tarot can reflect what's going on, certainly, and give us perspective on the present, and we can just leave it there. We'll practice that way. And then the tarot can do this other thing where it actually is a catalyzer. It can be useful in shifting what is and coming up with methods for having that shift happen. So with that, also, we want to think about the tamed wolf, the wolf being told to sit down, because with magic or with change work, we've got to loosen our control sense, right? I want to control what's happening. It's more like, I see the lay of the land, and I would like to massage this way. And I can see that it's within my capacity to create this type of movement. So softness with this practice. So first, inventory. Second, offering. So rooting it back in the suits. Who am I giving an offering to? This is a place for contemplation for you all. When I give readings, the opening prayer is a mile long. It's the guides, the guardians, the ancestors, the blah, 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 goes on and on and on. It's just long, it's Baroque, but it doesn't have to be. But you can think about, who am I offering to? Am I offering to the land? If we're here in the US, who is this land stolen from? This could be an opportunity to do an acknowledgement there. Um, this can be an offering to the land, it can be an offering to the ancestors, it can be an offering to all the energies that conspired to put you in this magical place, in this magical position of using tarot cards. And what a joy. What a wild set of circumstances that led us all together into this Zoom call, right? It could be an offering to those energies and entities. So offering to the tarot as a living system, as a living mythological system. And sometimes I'll think about offering things for all four of the suits, but usually not, to tell you the truth. Whatever I got on hand is what I can do. But so things for the air, you can blow on your deck. You can blow on, if you have things on your altar, you can blow on them. You can offer incense, offering perfume into the air. You can offer sound, the ringing of a bell. For earth, food, coins, rocks, pieces of hair, things that are solid. For fire, it can be candlelight if that's available, or it could be a movement if you just want to do a couple jumping jacks in place, just sort of ignite the physical fire. Or you might do breath of fire, right? Really ignite the fire in the body and the lungs, as an offering to this practice. Water, can leave it out wherever you're going to practice. Perfume, you can drop some perfume onto your deck. Wine, saliva, you can lick your deck. You can lick your tools. Saliva is a beautiful offering. Tears are a beautiful offering. So self-inventory, offering, prayer. So it's my main area of study is alchemy. And the motto for the alchemists in the Western tradition is ora et labora. And there is a myth that the tarot looks the way it does. It's got so many greater and lesser mysteries inside of it because alchemists and other types of magicians realized that the church was about to wipe them out again, for the umpteenth time. And so they put their symbol set into a game, their symbol sets into a game so that these images could be preserved. Um, we'll leave that open as a question. But ora et labora, pray and work. So our work with the tarot is prayer itself, but also this gives us an order of operations. You pray and then you work. And I like to use, when I'm teaching, this one that my friend Edgar Fabian Frias taught me because it's easy to remember, it's inclusive, it's inviting, and it covers your bases, really. So the first line, earth beneath me. And you can take a moment and I'll step us through this to feel the protection and solidity of the ground beneath your feet. And then you say sky above me, feeling the protection and expansion of the arc of the sky. And so with these things, we may have practices that go along with them. So if we feel the protection and solidity of the ground, we might then again acknowledge whose land we're standing on. We might acknowledge the ancestors right there, or the earth itself, the rocks, the mountains, the soil, the earthworms. And when we do sky above me, we might, if it's part of our practice, then add to it and acknowledge the creatures of the sky, the clouds, the stars, the twirling galaxies, angelic beings, beings without bodies, um, whatever it is, however you might language that. So it's below, above, within, without. Then we go divine within me, and you feel your own divinity very strongly and feeling how protective that is. And then you say, love surround me, which is feeling the protection and the beauty of all of the things that love you. And you can feel that abstractly. You could think of particular people. You could think of the trees in your yard as really loving you as you love them. You could just conjure that up and see what shows up for you, loves around me. Just take time to really feel it and allow yourself to be surprised by how much there is. There have been moments in my life where I get to that line and I think, I'm not really feeling this one. And I slow down, I wait, and then boom, I see it, I feel it, I'm held by it. So this one, before you begin your work, and we're gonna practice working with the tarot for ourselves by pulling just one card. And then I'm going to guide us through self-inventory, offering, prayer, pulling the card, looking at it as a reflection of now, and then using it as catalyzer, pulling another card or choosing another card perhaps to move the energy if that feels correct for you. So I'm going to give us a 10-minute break. You might want to gather a couple things. Maybe you've already got them going before you jumped on the Zoom, but whatever you got, a candle, a bell, some water, some food, figure out what you want to offer and grab your deck and get into a cozy seat. And we'll start that practice, let's say at 23 after the hour, so 10 minutes.
Eliza,
Mm-hmm.
a question before you break.
Yeah, of course.
As I've been going through this, I kind of broke out my deck just so I could see everything
Mhm.
and quickly go through them. How would you recommend like shuffling? Is there any specific way? How much to do? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that after break, but that's
Okay.
totally something that I will do. And we'll
Okay.
talk about shuffling in the ways that I like to pull a card. And that is open to interpretation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Are
Thank
there
you.
any other practice questions that you have, just so I know?
None for me at the moment.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll get to that one. Thank you for that. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
just
go
wanted
ahead.
to say too, I find that actually choosing a card is a place that I overthink it. And yeah, I could say more when we get into that, but I would love to talk about that. And
Yeah.
that prayer that you shared was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, that's Edgar's one. It's magnificent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so we'll talk about pulling the card and shuffling the card and dealing with the anxiety maybe of pulling a card um, in 10 minutes, so 24 past the hour. Welcome back. Just send me an emoji or a sign so I know you're back. Aha, great. Hi. So, as we're gathering back together, any questions about tarot cards, tarot practice? Anything coming up? Not so far. Okay. There is in the Google Classroom on the opening page a stream, and you can write questions in there and kind of talk amongst yourselves, and I'll also answer if questions come up in the coming weeks and you want to think about a particular card or a way of approaching your practice. Um, Sometimes it takes a while to think of what your questions might be. Okay, I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Oopsie. Let me share this. Yeah, there we go. So do we have our offerings? Do we have our thing or things that we want to offer ready? So now is a good moment to, oopsie, start with this bit. If you've got your offering at the ready, beginning with some self-inventory. How's my body doing? And you might invite some relaxation into the micro muscles around the eyes that work so hard. And take a second to allow the gaze to turn inward or to soften so that when you reopen the eyes, they're softer. You might extend that softness down to the jaw, the teeth, and the tongue, the ears and the throat, the shoulders, checking in with the quality of the heart, allowing it to shine forward, letting the body and the belly release, allowing the palms of the hands to relax, the knees and the calves and the ankles and the feet. Surely drop into gravity. Taking a load off and just taking a moment to notice if there's any place in the body that feels like it wants attention. Sending it your attention and some softness. Checking in with the mind. Are there any recurring thoughts that have been in play lately? Not assigning a judgment to them, just what have they been? What records is your mental DJ playing on repeat? Noticing the quality of the mind. Is it active? Is it spacious? Is it anxious? Is it receptive? And if it makes sense to, you can offer some softness to the mind. Just let it dilate open a little bit. Opening like a flower. And the fire, how's my energy? Do I have a lot of energy? Is it low? Does my energy feel receptive, resistant? Whatever it is, just noticing the qualities of energy that are with you in this moment. And then water. How are my feelings? What are they like today? What am I bringing to the table? And then if it feels right, you can offer some softness to your feeling states. Just some little warmth, some acceptance, some softness there. And noticing too, if there's anything you feel very attached to right now, as you begin to think about drawing a card. Sometimes just asking ourselves this question can show us something surprising. And if it feels right, you can offer some softness to that attachment. Just, I see you. And then we'll get into making an offering. Can be useful here to think about the land that you're on. For me, it's going to be land that was taken from the Lenape people, so acknowledging that this is their terrain, unceded. And then thinking also about all of the energies that made this moment possible. All of the miraculous entities, beings, human and non, that are present. And this offering can be for all of them. This offering can be to the system of the tarot, to everyone present today. Go ahead and make your offering if you haven't, whatever that looks like. For me, it's the lighting of a candle. And as our offerings are positioned, put in place, we can begin our prayer, which starts with earth beneath me, feeling the solidity, the bounty, the beauty, the power, and the protection of the ground underneath you. And then you can say sky above me, feeling the arc of the sky over you, feeling its power, its beauty, the swirls of the galaxies, the glimmer of the stars, all of the beings in the realms above, feeling the expansion and the protection of the sky above you, feeling held from below and from above. Turning inward and saying, divine within me, noticing the radiant, stunning, glorious qualities of the divine inside. Feeling the power and the protection of the divine within. Love surround me. Casting the glance outward, feeling, sensing, knowing, appreciating all of the many, many, many beings that love you. Feel the power and the protection that is offered by this. And now, reaching for your deck, I tend to place the deck in my dominant hand, but it can be interesting to see which hand do you want to hold the deck in. There's no right or wrong. It might change day to day. Perhaps you've got the deck in both hands. And you can go ahead and shuffle. And I just do this kind of shuffle. As if I've got a deck of cards. Some folks will even split the deck and do that bridging kind of shuffle that you'll see if you go to Vegas. It's up to you. I'm not that skilled, so I just do this kind of mixing around kind of shuffle. Some folks like to spread their deck all around, mash it around on a surface. If that feels good to you, if that feels like a way to get your presence in the deck to meet, go ahead and do things that way.
Can you talk us through the technique of how you're shuffling? I can't really see your hands.
Oh, Yeah, it's just like that. I don't know what language to use for it. If you have any, let me know. It's just taking a few and kind of mixing them in and out of the stack very casually. Did that clarify?
I think so. Yeah. It
Okay.
just feels so clumsy when I do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a clumsy endeavor. And some folks, if cards come flying out, they read those and um some of us just gather them back and keep shuffling. But yeah, this is how it looks with my hands in view. Oops, clumsy. And then for others, they might do a kind of mushing around. For others, they might be really neat, kind of professional shufflers. But I'll do it this way. And then once that feels right, and I may be speeding you in your process, but once that feels right, you're going to put the deck on a hard surface. And the way that I do this is I split the deck into three, and I take one little pile and I put it off to my left, and I take the third little pile and I put it on to my right, and then I take the middle pile and put that on top. That's just a way.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah. So you split the deck in three. First pile goes to the left side. Second pile goes to the right side. Third pile goes in the middle. Oh no, I didn't do that right. Wait. So I got my deck. I put one pile to the left and I leave a stack in the center. One pile to the right. And then this middle pile is the one I'll put on top. Did that clarify? I need a camera person. Let me know. I can,
No, I think I got it.
yeah, it's okay, cool. So split in three. I tend to pull the middle pile and stick it on the top. Not essential. If you feel like just doing your regular shuffle is plenty, then that is plenty. But I'll split it in three. I'll put the middle pile on the top. And then for us, for our private practice, we're going to pick a card. Now, for the sake of being specific and directing, I'm going to say just take the one from the top. Now, don't flip it over yet. If you have, shuffle and find one that hasn't been revealed. So we're going to take a card. We're not going to look at it yet. We're going to think in the sacred and beautiful, glittering space that is protected within, without, above, and below. What question do I have? You're not going to have to share it. I'd recommend choosing a question that is on the scale of intensity no higher than a 7. So if there's a real, like a thing that's feeling very dire, very intense, for this exercise, I would put that to the side and choose something that feels important, but not like what you're seeing here would be devastating. I only say that because I'm going to move us through this quickly, and I don't want to rush you through something that feels intense. So you'll go ahead and you'll pick this card from the top, place it in front of you. I'm just going to give us 5 or so minutes to try a couple of things with this card in front of us. in terms of its relationship to our question. First of all, just taking it in like a bird looking down on a landscape. What's the feeling of the card? What's the construction? What's the movement? What's the energy? Maybe looking at it intellectually for a moment. What do I know of this number and this suit, if applicable? This court card and this suit. If it's a major arcana, what do I know of this myth or this figure? Moving into the feeling self, how does this make me feel to look at this image? On the level of energy, what kind of energy is this bringing? Where does this card land in the body? Do I feel it in the mind, in the heart, in the left hand, in the foot? Where is it landing? And this card is sentient. It has a soul. It has much to tell you. So allowing the card to speak to you, perhaps asking your question and then hearing, sensing, seeing, feeling the answer from the card itself, as if a person is answering you. There are any clarifying questions you have for this card, you can go ahead and ask them. Now we'll move into catalyzing. So this first card is our divinatory reflection. This is what is seen in the present. And then you can ask yourself, or the card, or the energy between you two, what would be a catalyzing movement? How might I shift this in the direction of my wish for myself, or my wish for the situation, or maybe some language that feels better to you is how might I shift this? Where is the dynamic in this so that the situation is supportive of all involved? However you want to language it, and we can troubleshoot that in a moment if you like. Ask where the movement is, how you can shift, catalyze. And then pick another card from the top of the deck and place it next to the first card you pulled. So this card is an action card. It's a ritual card. It's a way of practice card. It's how to carry the reflection into your reality in a way that is transformative. And in particular here, we're going to be looking for a ritual action. And so we'll start, as we did before, looking at the card like a bird, aerially, just taking in shapes. And then using the intellect, what do I know about this myth or number, symbol set, suit? What do I know here? What do I feel about this ritual, this action, this way of being, this way of making a change? What kind of energy does this give me? Where does this land in the body? speaking to the card as a sentient energy entity that has arrived to help you out. Ask them for clarity around what the ritual or action or shift might entail. And coming back to the group, I'm seeing there's a question. Does the placement for the second card matter if it's on the left or the right? No. I put mine on the right because I read left to right and it just made intuitive sense, but up to you. Yeah. And of course, I'm bringing us above the 2 o'clock mark, but if you've got to go at 2, this is okay. It's all going to be recorded. And I'll just share how that went for me, and then I'll hear from you, whatever you want to share or ask. I asked about this book that I'm writing. I'm in the final editing stage and putting together the book tour, and how's it going to go? 6 of Wands, victory, high energy, joy. And then I pulled a second card. Oh, what's the action to make this happen? And I got the 8 of Coins, which in my own mental shorthand is the card of hard work. But actually, when I sat and just looked at it from an aerial view and thought about this as a ritual to kind of make this happen in a beautiful way, I saw all these pies spinning and I saw myself baking pies. And I thought, I asked, you want me to bake pies to make this book good? And I heard, yeah. Give some to your significant other who's had to deal with your ass while you're writing a book, and offer some to the land and take a minute, ground down. And so that gave me some nourishment to see that I was sort of a little out of balance somewhere. So I'm curious how that went for you all. And if you have questions, I'm seeing Bo's comment in the chat. First card dropped out while shuffling. I set it aside and started the process as led, pulled another. Cool.
Yeah, thank you for reading that. I set that one aside and then started over as lead, and then I pulled 2 cards that were really closely related and very strong.
Cool.
So I wasn't really sure how to integrate the 3 because the first one was a bit intimidating, and it was, I don't know if you read reversals, like if they're upside down. Um,
Yeah, this is a great question and one I was anticipating. Yeah. Um, in my own practice, if a card is upside down, sometimes it's an indicator like, ooh, there's another way to look at this,
mhm.
you know?
Yeah,
Maybe I'm looking at it strangely. Um, or like it's on its head. Sometimes is a joy, like a plant has its brain in the dirt and its limbs and sex organs up. And other times I'll see an upside down one and I'll feel, this is really begging for some attention. It's like needing some help. It's almost like an italic in a sentence, like, this.
yeah. It's interesting because it's like the first time this is a new deck
Ah,
and I really love it. But the one that dropped out was the devil. That's like kind of heavy, and it was upside down. And my question wasn't really related to how I interpret that or what, references I have about that particular concept. And so I went forward and I got the King of Wands. And in this deck, the figure is looking backward, the horse is looking forward and or looking towards the viewer, and then the figure's holding a branch. And there's a lot of movement to the left. Um, and that was really interesting, And then anyway, I could go probably talk too long about these ones, but yeah. And then the next one was the Queen of Wands, but she was upside down as well. So
Ah.
I know.
So wands are energy, and the devil is a particular kind of energy, right? It's the energy of pleasure.
Yeah.
So that could give you some indicators about um, where some more pleasure could be invited in,
Hmm.
on the levels of the devil, like physical or food or um, movement or orgasmic pleasure, whatever would make sense in your life.
Yeah.
Um, and then the second card, King of Wands, as a sort of ritual action. Were you able to connect to that?
Yeah, I was, but it was also more about like a healing journey of looking in the past and bravely going forward,
Hmm.
um, almost without looking, because he's looking backward.
Mm.
But then the horse is like confidently looking straight ahead or looking right
Mm.
at being observed, being noticed or making direct eye contact. Um, and so then I was like, well, what would be the response to that? I guess I had three cards, the middle, and I got the queen, and she's static. She's sitting, and she's got this wild cat that's just sitting next to her. She's petting and holding a wand of light, and she's got that bird at her breastbone. Just they're so beautiful. Like they're really lovely. What a lovely pair.
Mm.
So there's a lot to interpret and think about. I just want to let you know, in case I don't have another chance, that I just so appreciate your delivery and this content. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, what a pleasure.
Yeah.
I'm curious. You definitely don't have to share this, but was there a ritual action that came to you?
Well, what came to me with the Queen was really to slow down and
Mm.
care for what is, that is strong and wild, and to be the light.
Mm.
She's hovering over fire um, in this picture. So
Mm.
there's flame underneath and on both of them. The king he's in flight. He's running, and she's settled,
Mm.
but she's still very powerful. And she's tamed this beautiful beast. Or he feels maybe the beast is comforted by her.
Mm.
Yeah. So
If
I
you're,
don't know.
yeah, it could be as simple as I'm gonna make it a moment-to-moment ritual when I can remember to slow down.
Yeah.
But it could also be because this is how my mind goes, if it's useful. Could
Mhm.
also be, well, I'm getting fire as the remedy here.
Mm.
I gotta burn something. And
Yeah.
thinking about what that might be. Because our rituals are really, 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 really helpful for the not rational, not linear thought aspects of ourselves. Like they need them because that's how we let the aspects of ourselves that are not the talking parts, that's how we let them know they're being cared for as a
Okay.
ritual.
That's interesting. I mean, I really appreciate that. I do live in Altadena, California, and this whole
Mm,
area is just,
oh.
yeah. Fire is it's, yeah, it's difficult to even look at.
Mm.
But I am staying. We're not relocating, and she's standing above it. So, um, anyway, yeah, it's interesting to kind of place it within. So then the questions start to shift,
Yeah.
because my question was interpersonal, and now I'm looking at so many of the symbols and the relations, and then it's asking to expand, so that it seems like there's so much potential in reading these that the
Mhm.
questions might change as well. It could be as simple as doing a fire ritual, or is it just as simple as the day to day of just being and staying there? I'm not sure.
Since it seems like either thing is about being present, right? I decided to stay despite the fires. I decided to slow down.
Mhm.
Um, and if lighting a fire would be, traumatic or triggering, certainly don't do that. Then it could be, what is a symbolic act that would let myself, who are not the talkers, know that we're staying, we're settling? Would it be like finding a really heavy stone, just
Mhm.
placing it somewhere significant in the
Mhm.
yard or in the house? Stay.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank
Mhm.
you. Yeah, because I do have that thought, and that's the plan, but I am not grounded.
Mhm.
I am in flight,
Sense. Yeah, it
mentally.
makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. And if we're feeling not grounded and we're in flight, and that's an appropriate response to some things that are happening,
Mhm.
um, then we could think also too then of a portable thing that's grounding, a little stone I could keep in the pocket for a while. Just so I can touch earth, or put some dirt in a vial and wear it as a necklace.
Mm. Yeah. Take it with me.
Hmm.
Yeah. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Hmm. 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 Anyone else having questions or thoughts about this process?
Yeah. Um, I'm just wondering about like the major arcana, the minor, and the court cards.
Hmm.
Um, so like for my question, I pulled a minor arcana, but then for the activator, I got a major.
Hmm.
Um, and kind of how I was reading that is like my question is really, it is about something that's day to day, but
Hmm.
then the answer felt like it was about embracing something archetypal and like really
Mm.
trying to tap in with like timeless energy or something.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I guess I'm just curious, like a little bit, if you could offer a little bit more about the relationship between like those three groups.
Yeah. Minor arcana. It's the stuff of the day. It's exactly as you said. Yeah, it's the stuff of the day to day. Major arcana will be the mythic or the archetype. And then the courts are minor. So they are the kind of people in our day to day. So whereas a major arcana would be a deity a lot of the time, the court card's going to be a person you run into in your day to day. And so major arcana can offer us assistance from the mythic, the divine, the poetic, however I like to say it. And the courts and the minors, where the courts are minors, but the minor arcana will show us kind of what the scene is like. Who are the earthly people and things that are um, with us on stage. And so if you get a major as a kind of action or a ritual suggestion, I'm not sure which one you got. I don't know if you want to share it.
Yeah, sure. I can share. It was really interesting to, I don't know, I guess my timing with the way that you were leading it. Like I had picked the card already when I asked the question
Yeah.
instead of the other way around or
Yeah.
something, which I think I usually do. But it was also interesting because I didn't really know what like I was like, I don't know what my question is. And so I just asked a question about, feelings of aliveness and like um being able to feel more in touch with like my sensuality and like kind of erotic intelligence just in the day to day.
Hmm.
And I got the in this deck it's elements, so the seven of water, and then I asked for clarification on that, and I got strength.
Hmm. And was that a clarifying card or was it an action card?
Oh, sorry, it was an action
Yeah.
catalyst. Yeah, catalyst card.
Yeah. So that's pretty spot on there, right? Because Cybele is the meteorite goddess who rules the ecstatic. And if you studied with her in ancient Rome, you would learn about orgasmic
Right.
possibility. So it depends, all of our lives and bodies and experiences and accessibility is different. You could put an image of Sibel up and just talk to
Mm.
her for a while and give her offerings.
Mm.
Could go to the local natural history museum and commune with some meteorites as your ritual action, or you could undertake the study of kind of orgasmic mystical practice
Mm.
and start to incorporate that into some ritual possibility. There's lots of ways to go with that one. And that can be the nice thing about pulling a major arcana for the action card. It's like, ooh, actually, there's like a deity associated with this that I could start to learn
Mm.
about, or some kind of natural force that I could connect to in some way.
Mm. And then if you get a court card, you're saying that are you always considering the court cards as people, or is it ever like, is it other people, or is it you as a person too?
Either one. And, if we're asking questions for ourselves, it can be the you doing an action if that's useful.
Mm.
Usually, I read them as people, only because that's what we deal with. It's like a major day-to-day interaction. But yeah, if it occurs to you to read a court card otherwise, then do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so cool. Wow. Anyone else having a question or something they noticed?
Something I was just thinking about is kind of like I said earlier, when I first started tarot, I found myself feeling pretty anxious about like the actual picking of a card. And part of that too was like once I did pick a card, like if I was doing like a bigger spread for myself, I would start looking at them and like trying to piece it together even before I'm done picking. And I have, found little ways to help with that throughout learning. And one is just kind of like, I think what you said was just like simply flipping them over and not like if I was doing a larger spread, I would have them like on this side. So, and then kind of taking it in all together. And then another aspect of that well, I was curious about like why, if there was a specific or ritual reason that you split the deck into three. Because I think that's interesting. I think I started for myself, I found that like feeling almost like a warmth or a like pull on certain cards and choosing those cards in an almost energetic way started to be helpful for me.
Yeah, then do it that way.
Yeah.
For me, the split in three has to do with what we'll talk about next week at length.
Oh, cool.
With the three levels of experience, the gut experience, the heart experience, and the higher mind experience or the external mind experience. So I do three just to acknowledge that there's kind of three at least levels of experience active. But yeah, doing the thing where you just fan them out and pick one that feels hot. Great.
Yeah.
Great strategy.
Cool.
Yeah. So I'll say a few words about how to just kind of close down this space. And then next time is all practice. So we'll get to practice with each other, practice with ourselves, and kind of figure out strategies and techniques and relationships to this symbol set. So we don't spend a ton of time on each card. I like to spend more time practicing because the memorization stuff will come. So to close, I like to say thank you. And you can say thank you in exactly the same way as you did your opening prayer. So thank you, love. Thank you, divine. Thank you, sky. Thank you, earth. And then taking the cards up, putting them away, returning them to the deck. You might just shuffle again, just to kind of reintegrate those energies, or not, just place them on top. And then I used to work at a psychic shop on Sunset Boulevard in LA. If you can imagine how wild the stories out of there were, but I learned this from a person I worked with there, where when you're done, you just knock on the deck 3 times to kind of clear it out, close it, say thank you to the tool. And then some folks they wrap their decks up, they put them on a dish of salt, they'll put them in a box, like tool away. Mine just sits there out on my desk. So I'll leave that to you as part of your homework. How do I want to close a session? For me, thank you and putting the cards and just quick tap it out. Putting them on my desk is sufficient, but others of you may need extra layers of closure. So next time we'll talk about the 3 layers of experience. We'll learn a 3-card spread. spread. We'll practice doing partner readings. We'll look at larger spreads. If there's time, we can practice one. If there's not, you can practice it in your own time. And we'll also talk about tarot-thonning if that's something you'd want to do. I think that's all. I'll stop the recording